Well, before we begin the debate this evening, I must tell you that after repeated pushes, especially on this channel, for the Chief Minister and the government to respond to the public health crisis that's looming in Mumbai with a dump yard that's still on fire, the Chief Minister has agreed to meet with the citizens of Deonar in the first week of April, after, of course, that long Holi and Easter weekend. We'll be tracking that story very carefully and very closely for you because we take the issue personally here on this channel. It's a problem that needs to be solved immediately, and we'll continue to maintain our pressure on the government, both local and state. But our focus this evening is on the new real estate regulator that now waits for the presidential nod before the new set of rules finally come into play. Remember, each state will have to bring in a regulator in their state through a notification. And once that regulator comes in, a lot of changes will come through, which will make buying a home much easier for you and me. The question we are asking tonight is simply this: should we buy that home now, or should we wait for the regulator? Both sides of that argument have pros and cons, and we're going to try and understand that with some of the brightest minds in the sector. Here's who I have lined up for you this evening to help you understand whether or not you should be buying right now or waiting until later. Niranjan Hiranandani, co-founder, managing director at Hiranandani Group; Piramal K. Shroff, advocate and solicitor; Kumar Gera, chairman of Gera Developments; and Ramesh Jogani, founder of the real estate fund IPAL, all join me on the show. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for making time for the home buyers of this country. It's our pleasure to have you on the show. Piramal Shroff, I'll start with asking you this. Obviously, when there's a lot of information available to me as a home buyer, a lot of the risk that I'm taking on right now gets moved off. Now, here's the problem at this point. As a home buyer, I don't know whether or not I can trust a developer. I don't know how to go out and make that purchase. Does it make sense then for me, if that's how I feel at this point, to wait until the regulator comes in?
The question which you are asking depends upon that when the regulator is going to come in, we really don't know. And if the project, which are the existing projects, which will ultimately have to be taken up in and within the scope of the new law, then in that event, whether you buy now or you buy later on, the question will be only a matter of time. And the disclosures will be coming more under the new regime. Otherwise, you will be governed by the present existing whatever information that you are able to collect in the market or with the builder really dishes out to you. So if you are looking for a specific information and you require all sorts of statutory declarations and disclosures, then you need to wait till the project is registered.
But you know, in your opinion as an advocate at this point, Mr. Shroff, shouldn't all buyers require that information? Would you recommend anybody go ahead and make a purchase without gaining that information?
No, I would say that the disclosure is always, it's a very empowering position that you make a conscious and an informed decision for the purpose of your purchase. But ultimately, the new law gives you a far more scope for this information, which is otherwise not available in the present regime. And I believe the disclosures which he makes are limited. But under the new law, you will be having an advantageous position to know more about your project, and quarterly updates will also be coming in.
Yes, quarterly updates as well. Niranjan Hiranandani, it does seem like Mr. Shroff is leaning towards telling us to wait until the regulator comes in. Do you agree?
Of course, if you want more and more information, then you must certainly wait. But my view is personally that if you're looking at waiting for the regulator, waiting for all the registrations, you're about a year away or year and a half away before you can get all this information available for each and every project that you can look for. So, and remember one thing, they're going to escrow 70% of the amount into the project. So obviously the amount which will, the funding required by the developer will increase. So there is a chance that the price of the existing projects may go up as compared to what it is. Over a period of time, such an effect will not take place and the prices will average out. But the first reaction of the developers for existing projects will certainly be able to increase the prices in view of the lockup of capital. So though I agree with Parimal Shroff completely that if I want more and more information, I would certainly wait for a year and a half till I get the information. But if today you wait too long, the opportunity of the slowing down of the market, which gives you bigger opportunities and wider variety of products, and also a bargaining power, may be completely lost once a fair level playing field comes across to every project that is available in the market. So I would suggest you should buy today.
Well, Mr. Hiranandani, I have this question for you. Of course, there will be some pressure on pricing. Of course, the escrow account, and to explain that to our viewers, developers will be required to keep 70% of the money they collect in sales for a certain building in a separate bank account, and that money can only be used for construction of the building in question. It cannot be diverted anywhere else. The argument here is that that will increase the cost of construction in general in all of the finances and the price of homes after that. Mr. Hiranandani, it also depends on market forces. Will developers, and I wonder, given the market that we're looking at right now, will developers have room really to increase prices even if they need to?
You have to understand what is going to be the volume. Remember one thing, once the disclosure comes in, it will take us at least 3 to 4 months or 5 months for the purposes of completing these disclosures, and again maybe a month or 2 for the regulator to give license to each of the projects. So I'm looking at, from the time the regulator comes into force, at least 3 to 6 months for all the projects to get listed, which means between the time the regulator comes into force and the product can be going into the market, it could be anything from 3 to 7 months. So obviously there's going to be a bind, and the amount of material available in the market, while the demand does not shrink, is going to be the same. So there will be a time when there will be less supply available in terms of whatever are the approved products which are available in the market. So builders will not be allowed to sell in that period. So even if you want to buy, you cannot buy because the developers are not allowed to sell. So you will get a void between a couple of months. So if you're willing to wait for this time and willing to wait for a year, 2 years or 3 years for the purposes of buying, yes, you should wait. But those who want to get a house or get a reasonable house today, obviously I think if I was to be a buyer on the other side instead of being a seller, I would certainly buy.
You'd certainly buy. Kumar Gera, do you agree? Certainly buy, because even, I mean, I'm still not entirely convinced. As a buyer, the amount of information that I will have access to, where I'll be able to go onto one website and have verified information about every project that's up for sale, that's not available right now for any buyer, and I know for sure that's something that makes buyers nervous. Doesn't it make sense then to wait?
I don't completely agree with your proposition, Faye. And I would tend to agree with what Niranjan said, but I would make it a more equivocal buy now rather than later for a variety of reasons. You know, if we are very lucky, all this will become law and come into practice. In 12 months, it would be a great achievement. It's more likely to be somewhere between 18 and 24 months for the whole process to be completed and for it to become a reality. At the same time, there will be the normal increase with time in pricing, plus there will be the extra cost because of this RERA Act. There is, you can say what you like, it may be absorbed by the developer if there is no room, as you are saying, to increase prices, but there is going to be a cost push without a doubt for a variety of reasons under this, this Act. Now, that is a cost that may be worth it for the buyer, because they will get peace of mind, they will get, it's like an insurance, you pay a price for it and then you sleep comfortably, you're not worried. Now why did I say that they should buy now? It is with a caveat, and the caveat is, if you do buy now, you'll get the best deals, the market is right, the prices are right, provided you do your homework, provided you take the trouble to find out where you're putting your money, with whom are you investing, how are they performing, what is the track record of that developer, what is happening in that local micro market. And if you do that, I think this is the best time to go ahead.
Right. Parimal Shroff, I want to ask you this. Of course, the most important thing to remember is that RERA will cover any building that doesn't have an occupation certificate. So it's possible to buy now and still benefit. What kind of, and I want to pick up from what Mr. Gera just said, what sort of homework should I be doing if I'm going to buy now with the hope that I will benefit when the regulator comes in?
After hearing Mr. Hiranandani and Mr. Gera, I have one input to give, and that is also covering your question.
Yes.
Today, the best situation would be, it is undoubtedly that for RERA to kick in, for projects to be registered, for RERA means Real Estate Regulatory Authority to become functional, it's going to be taking time. And rules will have to come in, state will have to come forward, and there will have to be so many understandings.
How much time do you expect it to take?
I think, reasonably speaking, there is nothing on the horizon for coming 6 to 9 months, nothing is likely to happen,
right,
because all this getting ready part will take time. I have a suggestion to make, that if the real estate industry comes forward and does a mock drill of giving all the information which they are going to give after 9 months, it puts forward in the public domain, and it says that you are looking for all this information, RERA will take it out of me, and I will have to be compelled to give it to register my project and then market or advertise or enter into agreement. I am beforehand voluntarily submitting it to you. I believe it will be win-win for all. The sense of doubt and suspicion will be out, and for RERA it will be a good, I would say, dress rehearsal for the RERA to begin and the real estate industry to greet and meet this particular new challenge. And this is what is expected of a matured market that we have in Maharashtra.
Mr. Shroff, that's a fantastic suggestion. It was also met with wry smiles from both of the developers on the panel. Mr. Hiranandani, do you believe that the industry will actually go ahead and do a dry dress rehearsal, a dry run where you just make available the information that we want?
Of course, we are already working towards it. We hope that very soon we'll be able to put all the plans and other things on the website, our own website, of course, until the regulator doesn't come up. So we are already working towards that objective, and maybe in 2 or 3 months, of course, we have a large stock of buildings which are under construction, so it won't be able to put all these things on the website immediately, but our target is in a couple of months we will certainly try to put everything which is otherwise coming through the regulator directly by our own companies. Hopefully in a couple of months that will be available to the thing, but the only difference being that the escrowing of the account will come only after the registration. All the other things we can do up front, and I don't think there is too much of a other problem. As I mentioned in your earlier conversation that we had, the transparency part is the most effective part of the bill. The regulatory and the control parts may become negative over a period of time when more and more controllers come into the picture, especially at the state level. So I think there is a fear that the controller could actually hinder the progress of these projects at points of time. So we are really looking at people who be more development oriented regulators rather than the licensee type of regulators which used to exist in the earlier days. So that's a big question which is remaining unanswered by the government, which are not clarifying these issues. Though Mr. Venkaiah Naidu said that the idea is not really to harass the developers and other things, and he has issued clarificatory statements to that effect.
In fact, if I were to quote Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, his quote was simply this, that we're looking for regulation, not strangulation of the industry. He has quite a sense of humor. I want to just close the loop on what we were talking about. Kumar Gera, do you believe that the industry, maybe through NAREDCO and CREDAI, can come forward and begin to offer this information of its own accord without waiting for the regulator?
I like Mr. Shroff's suggestion, and the reason I was smiling, which you noted, is because we have a word going around in our organization saying that Gera is RERA ready. So we have already had in practice an escrow mechanism for our various projects. They're all escrowed, and there's no reason why everybody shouldn't take the initiative.
Are they escrowed at 70%, Mr. Gera?
No, our method of escrow is that no money from a particular project will move into another one. So you get enough to complete that project, and each silo is separate. The government's requirement is slightly different. So we're moving in that direction. I mean, if it was 2 months down the line, we have no problem. But there's no harm if everybody, as Mr. Shroff said, starts looking at that, setting the pace for that, and moving ahead so that as the rules are being framed, we are in a better position to say these are the bottlenecks. Nothing wrong with that.
All right. I also want to very quickly ask you this, and we had this conversation a little while ago. The 70% escrow, that also includes the cost of land, which I know that your current system does not. What sort of a spanner does that throw into the works, even for a company that is RERA ready?
I don't think it is something that cannot be handled, but when a person asks a question that what is the cost of 70% in escrow with the present rules, there is no single answer either in terms of percentage or in terms of per square foot. The reason for that is that where you have very high value land and where you have low value land, the entire 70% escrow cost factors vary dramatically. The 70% which will be in escrow can only be withdrawn based on the progress of work at site. In low cost projects, cost of construction could be 80%. In high value areas, cost of construction could be 10 or 15%. So it's a very skewed situation, and I think there will be issues on this one subject as we go forward, which will need to be ironed out.
All right, I want to bring in Ramesh Jogani from an investor's point of view. We talked about the home buyer, Ramesh, and there's also the investor who sort of backed away from this market over the last couple of years, the retail investor, but someone who buys property as an investment. Now, the biggest risk, obviously, the person has faced up till now was a lack of information or disclosure, and the other was delays. Are you as an investor obviously looking at this as a positive, but it's not a positive until the actual regulator does come in. So what sort of differences has this made to your investment plan so far?
So basically we do a very detailed kind of due diligence. So it does not really affect our kind of investment. But as far as a retail investor is concerned, and if he's very, very uncomfortable investing without enough disclosures, then I think he should wait. But otherwise, if you look at Mumbai or any other city, there's hardly 2% or less than 2%, or even, I think even less than 0.5% of buildings have not been completed. I've always insisted that builders on their own, without any regulations, have
they've been completed
built
eventually at some point.
At some point, and most of the delays have happened because of change in policies, change in regulations. It's not only the developer to be blamed. So I think if you are diligent enough, you can go and invest even now. RERA will help. And those who are very nervous kind of buyers, I think they should wait, like everybody on the panel is saying. Otherwise,
okay, so you know what? On this show, we've had several guests come in and tell us that you should do your homework before you buy a home. Now, I have a very special panel here, and this is a panel, I think, between the four of you, if we count the years of experience in the real estate industry, we'd cross 100 quite easily. I want specific advice from each of you on what kind of homework I should be doing if I am going to go out and buy this home before the regulator comes in. Mr. Shroff, I'll start with you. What's your advice to someone who's just going out to buy a house right now?
I would say that the most important part of the story is when we talk about Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, or for that purpose Pune, you require to see the sanctions are in place, because the plans and manner in which that the things are marketed, at times what happens is that the fungible is available, TDR is available, I will get this thing passed later, I have a IOD but I don't have a further commencement certificate.
Yes.
Unless you have got approvals in place, nothing is going to work.
How do I check though? How do I check these approvals?
That part you will have to check by having a due diligence, which is, in that sense of the word, individual buyer does not have capacity and a teeth to do that.
Yes.
But you need to, when you say you are willing to do the homework, you must try to cross this particular hurdle.
I mean, sometimes it requires me to RTI the information out of the local local body, which is not really something
It's
that
not
people have time
realistic.
and energy to do, really.
It's not realistic, because you do RTI and come back and a builder will find that this is supposed to be that your real intentions are in doubt. So you need to be very frank and transparent with the builder and say that please show me. And I think today the builder is ready. And
Is he really?
Today any and every builder is ready to show his bona fides or to tell you upfront as to what the situation with his sanction is. So not to take more time, you must talk to your builder without going into this exercise of RTI, because you are not an activist, you are a buyer. So if you are a home buyer or an office buyer, go to your builder, tell him to show you the sanction, see your plan, see the commencement certificate, see the status. Ask for an architect certificate who is on the supposed to be an authorized architect of the builder, that
Right.
this work has been done according to the sanction
You know,
plan.
the other thing that this regulation will change, of course, is the quality of the contract that's drawn up between developer and buyer at this point. Right now, and we know that there are cases across the country where developers are signing or getting customers to sign what is a very one-sided contract, whether that's in penalties, whether that's the way it's designed. That's a problem that RERA will also solve. So in the meantime, if I'm over the next 1 year going to go out and buy something, how do I make sure I'm not signing a one-sided contract? Mr. Shroff?
I personally think that to negotiate your contract with a builder, the builder has also a handicap which you must appreciate. If he has got, say, around 50 tenements into his building or his wing of a building, he has executed 10 or 20 on a basis of a certain form, he is not going to alter it for one person. He is not going to be in position to sign different contract, because it will have a ramification for the premises which he has already sold.
Okay.
So to my mind, there is very little which you could do. But it
So
may
walk
be,
away then?
No, the point is, you may be joining in the project which is about to be over. You may be joining in a project which is expected to be over in couple of months. Then those, between the execution and the possession, what provisions are there may not be so much worth, I would say, that haggling on. But what...
But I'm going to stop you there, and I'll tell you why I'm going to stop you.
Please.
Because a lot of times, even the smallest little clause in those contracts wind up tripping a customer up later if he needs to go to court. Things like there's no uniformity right now in what is a penalty that a developer has to pay for a delay, vis-a-vis what is a penalty that a buyer has to pay for a delay in payment. A lot of times there are clauses put in that prevent buyers from going to court, which force them to use arbitration. Buyers don't understand these things. If they were to take that contract to a lawyer on their own end, where the lawyer said, listen, I don't think this is fair, are you saying that it might not be worth haggling for?
No, I would say, if you've got a bargaining power, if the builder has sufficient reason to really negotiate also or renegotiate the contract, then he is going to do it. But for a single unit, I believe that this is going to be unpractical for the purpose of pointing out all this.
So then
but for a
away.
moment, let us think that there is group of buyers who are buying.
Okay.
Surely they will be able to negotiate it. They will be able to say what penalties to provide, when to cancel, how I will be liable to pay maintenance, what manner the management fee will be charged. All that is possible to be done. But for a single home buyer, it is going to be, I would say that you may recommend him anything, but at the end of the day, the builder will probably have to discount the whole thing and say that this is it, take it or leave it, because he is also having his own handicap.
And I think this is important for all of our viewers to understand. Mr. Shroff very clearly pointed out that unless you can band together as a group, and that's where you'll really have the power. And this also happens, by the way, if you're approaching consumer court or any of the other courts, it makes you far more powerful if you do it as a group. But as an individual, you might have very little power right now even to change the contract, and that will change when the regulator comes in. That's what we're talking about, the fact that as an individual you will be far more powerful, you'll be more empowered, which is why it might make sense to wait for that regulator if you're making that buy. Kumar Gera, what's your advice to someone who's going out right now to buy a home?
I think there are many points that I would like to make here. I think the first is the buyer should not be afraid. That's the first step. Afraid to ask, afraid to seek clarifications, afraid to go into the contract, to read it. Now let's take an example. If a buyer comes to my company tomorrow and says, Mr. Gera, you know that the RERA is likely to come, could you consider a fair interest rate on both sides? Presently it's not fair. I have to take a call to say yes or no. I have to explain why it's different. It's for the buyer to choose to sign or to exit. So like that, there are many things. There are a few other things which I would suggest is that it's necessary to approach developers who have a good track record of delivery, track record of quality. How do you find that out? You have to visit their projects. You don't have to just look at the sample unit and expect that, but completed projects, you must talk to some people who have taken delivery. I would suggest between 10 and 15 people and tell them, I'm planning to buy, what would you advise? Give me some tips. So if you have the time, if you have the inclination, then if you do these things, you can definitely get an advantage today, in today's situation, to go ahead. No harm in asking for a good price, no harm in asking for conditions which you think are fair. You may get it, you may not get it. It's up to the builder and to you. But don't be afraid and do your homework by doing all these things. Read the contract, understand it. Many clauses appear to be one-sided, but there is a good reason for them. And they can be explained, and then you will see that it's necessary to do that because the promoter has to take decisions on behalf of 500 people who will have 500 different ideas. So there are many things that, but main thing is don't be afraid, get out there and get comfortable for your own decision. Or wait.
All right. So don't be afraid. Get out there and get comfortable for your decision. Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's one takeaway. Mr. Shroff's takeaway was very clear. If you're going in to buy something, especially now in a complex or a building, try and befriend the other buyers. There's power in numbers. That's my takeaway, Mr. Shroff. Mr. Hiranandani, what's your advice to someone who's going out to buy homes right now?
Is that to me again?
I think one of the questions which you are asking is that the transparency in the future is going to be higher than the present. What I have an answer to that in some respects. Most of the financial institutions are doing a verification of the project before they start funding projects, because a large number of buyers go to same financing agents, so they would like to secure themselves. So we do go and give all the documents of the projects to the financial institutions, whether they are banks like State Bank or other banks like HDFC and other financing agencies. So what they do is they do verify our projects, and they have the verifications advance available to them. So when a buyer goes to them, they simply tell the buyer that there is no problem relating to the project because we have already pre-cleared this project by their verification, their legal verifications and other things. So a good suggestion could be from you to a buyer, to a prospective buyer, would be go to a good financial institution which has pre-cleared the project of the sorts that you have, so that already the confidence is available, because a large number of buyers have already bought from the same building or project, as well as the banks have given sufficient monies to other buyers in the project also. So they have done a pre-clearance of the project in multiple respects before you actually come into the picture. So that's one way of reducing the risk availability, and also that the fact that the builder is already given all the information which otherwise would be available to a regulator, to a financing agency or a bank for the purpose of this. So a little effort to go to a financing agency, and especially nowadays that does not guarantee, when all the people are taking loans from
that does not guarantee timely possession. While it's fair that all lenders do background checks right now, they do legal checks. Yes.
Let me explain you, just 1 minute only. No. It is available under MOFA. In Maharashtra, that is already available. So that's what I wanted to say. The regulation in Maharashtra already prescribes a date, and if there is anything that is there, you can go to a consumer court. The only difference between now in Maharashtra and subsequently is that you will be able to get the decision expeditiously with the regulator, which today you have to go to a consumer court for the purposes of getting it. So it's not that in Maharashtra, with MOFA being available, such a kind of regulation was already available. However, we didn't have a regulator to do it, so the time taken for a person to complete it through the consumer court was taking longer period of time. So I don't agree with you when you say that there was no such time frame available under the Maharashtra Ownership Flat Act. It was available. However, it is true that it took a longer time to get justice through the consumer courts as compared to what is expected through the regulator, which is now going to be appointed. So I don't see that the people who had earlier purchased it on that part of it would find it anything different in doing a contract today, which would also come under the points of the regulator if the building is still not complete.
All right, just to help our viewers understand that one point about the consumer courts right now, if you have a problem with a home that you've bought and you need to take legal remedies, you have to either approach the consumer court or one of the civil courts. The consumer court on an average might take 4-5 years to give you a judgment. There's an appellate tribunal that will be set up in every state after the regulator comes in. The tribunal is required to give judgments in 60 days. A big difference from where we are right now and how long we have to wait for justice as consumers. Ramesh Jogani, what is your advice for someone buying a home right now?
I would concur with what Mr. Hiranandani said. Where due diligence is concerned, if the banks are giving loans to the developer for the apartment purchasers, then 70% of your work is done. So only thing what is not covered is, like you rightly pointed out, that if I have to address any issues, I have to go to consumer court, or I do not get the same penal interest what I pay to the developer in case of delay. So that would be taken care with the RERA bill.
That will be taken care of with the RERA bill. All right, so we're going to have to take a quick break now, but I just want to give you one more piece of advice before we go into that break. 3 people who need to be on your side, on your payrolls as a buyer when you're going to buy a home. First of all, you need to have a lawyer look through every document before you sign, and that's nobody else's responsibility but your own. You need to have an architect look through the plans or the home or the structure that you're going to buy, whether under construction or ready to occupy. And you need a financial advisor to look through your home loan and your finances to make sure you have the ability to service the EMIs on a regular and timely basis. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and open up the phone lines so you can call in and join the conversation and ask your questions. That's on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the Urban Debate on Magicbricks Now, India's first property channel. Thank you for tuning in. We're having a very interesting conversation on how the real estate regulator will change our lives as home buyers, and if we should wait until that regulator comes in before we buy our homes. Joining me on the show and staying through that break is Parimal Shroff, Niranjan Hirandani, Kumar Gera and Ramesh Jogani. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with us. Parimal Shroff, there's a very interesting conversation we were having during the break, which is basically the whole point of artist impressions and brochures and the big hoardings that get put up by the real estate industry, which are not regulated right now. There's nobody verifying whether the picture is actually going to turn out to be the home, whether the brochure has information that's reliable. All of that will change. When you say promising the sky, literally an under construction project, you are promising the sky because there's nothing there to sell. All of that will of course be regulated, and all of that will change once a regulator comes in, won't it?
Yes, of course. I think this is also one of the progressive new provisions which are brought by RERA. It is referring to now advertisement and the contents of the advertisement in its truthfulness. If it is misleading or false. And also, so the prospectus, if in a prospectus or so to say brochure, if you are making any statements which are ultimately found to be misleading or false, then the purchaser has several rights. When some of them are as follows, that he can quit the project, he can ask you to refund, he can demand from you interest, and apart from that, it may amount to breach of law, which can lead up to 10% of the project cost as a penalty.
Right.
And I think it will be a deterrent not to puff up the product in such a manner that it may mislead a man and ultimately tell him this is supposed to be nothing but artist impression.
There's a fair amount of puffing up that happens right now. For example, we still don't know what the difference is between luxury, super luxury, ultra luxury. We don't know what any of those definitions are. I mean, there are buildings that are being built in one part of town, being given completely different addresses or completely fictitious addresses where, Lower Parel is being called Upper Worli and so on. All of that will have to stop, won't it?
No, no, of course it will have to stop, and I personally speaking, I think it should stop, because there has to be a correct picture which should be given to a purchaser. And at this point of time, I believe there is a competition to give this kind of puffed up presentation, but it will all become rationalized and it will become realistic. And I think that's all the standardization and professionalism in the real estate is all about.
The other interesting thing that we've noticed from this bill, Mr. Shroff, is of course the definition of who qualifies as an agent. Remember, for our viewers at home, all real estate agents will be regulated by this bill. Now, from the definition that we're looking at, all of the online portals at this point that provide information might also qualify as agents, will also be brought under the regulator and will be responsible for all of the information that they publish and put out.
I fully agree with you. The definition of estate agent will include them. Not only that, they will have to take the registration and they will have to refer to it. Otherwise, there is going to be a very heavy penalty of waiting for them. And I believe this is the most progressive legislation which is now taking in its fold for the first time real estate agents in India. And that was very necessary, and it's a natural maturing of the law itself, which I believe has been correctly done.
Kumar Gera, do you agree that bringing real estate agents under the bill, whether they're online portals or they're actually agents on the ground, was necessary and it will actually lead to a far healthier industry than we have right now, because so much of it is unorganized and definitely not regulated?
Absolutely, without doubt. And I think it's a very good step forward, because one must not have misleading advertisements, promises which are not maintained or dropped in the fine print. And a lot of that has happened in the past, and I think this is a good way to prevent it continuing, and it will improve the image of the industry by through this. I support it totally.
Support it totally. I have another question for you, Mr. Gera. Obviously, if I go out right now, and since this is what we're talking about, if I go out right now and buy a home, maybe I didn't make the best decision or the best in class decision. Is there a larger possibility, once the regulator comes in, of buildings getting stalled because those particular developers aren't able to comply with the regulations and they're fairly strict? What happens if a developer can't comply?
Yeah, now let's look at this whole concept. It's a gigantic effort, and let's make no bones about it. The number of regulators that will require to function as per the intent of the Act is large. The number of developers to be controlled and brought under the regulation is huge, and getting all this done without delay within the 30-day, 60-day time frame which are there is going to be no mean task. It should not end up like the urban land ceiling, with cases pending for your turn for 5 years and 7 years and 10 years. I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the implementability of this in an efficient, quick, transparent manner, and if that is done, then there's a lot of good that will come out of it. Undoubtedly, the Act is a game changer. The industry is going to be completely different to what it has been before this Act and after. A lot of changes will come. We're talking about a few, but many things will happen in the process. But I think the implementation in letter and spirit of the intent is what is a little bother for me. I hope it happens the way it's intended.
Mr. Hirandani, do you agree? I know that you had some reservations as well, and if we consider any of our states, let's assume Karnataka or Maharashtra, there'll be a regulator looking after Mumbai. There's going to be a separate regulator looking after the market in Pune. What about the smaller markets of Satara, Sangli, Kolhapur, Nasik, in Karnataka, Mangalore, Mysore, all of these markets? It's not viable to have regulators for each of those cities. Do you think that it's going to be a huge challenge to actually implement it, every broker in every small city, in every market?
That's the intention of the Act, and now you can't change that position completely. It is a humongous task, and certainly unless it's not put in a way by which individual persons will actually put it up, I don't think it's going to be possible to implement it in the speed and time frame that they are talking about. But let's presume we simplify the process. Let's say they ask the developers that you will put up your plans on your website on such and such thing completely, or put it directly, given an access to put on the website which is over there, and then you do a self statement relating to the property, and it gets registered automatically without any intervention of any order by any regulator at that point of time, and a self statement is done. And if it is wrong, anyway you are accepting the penal provisions. So if there is a possibility of not going through a bureaucratic process for doing it, and you automatize these kind of processes, which makes it easy for us to upload these files directly on the net, either on our own website or on a website which is prepared by the government, and interference is less but control is better. So I think that would be very important to do, and you could do it quickly. But the problem will be that if they start saying that they're going to verify each and every paper that is submitted in the country, it's a humongous task, and no matter what kind of machinery you create, is going to become too small. So yes, it's going to be terrible if they don't actually think through the process and leave it to the people really to do it independently.
The other question, if they are going to verify every piece of paper across the industry, across all markets, then you're also going to have to create little nodular regulators who will verify all of those papers. Are we also creating then, Kumar Gera, a completely new mechanism there for the problems that you're already facing in terms of extortion on the ground?
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't go to that extent, but I would say we start opening another window. You know what these windows are all about. So it will be a new window. We're talking about a single window, and this should not become a new window. That's the whole objective, because that is not the intent of the Act. But because of reasons that we've been talking about, that fear exists, and let's make no bones about it. It can get derailed because of that and not achieve the objectives at all.
Paribas, is there a way around that?
No, I personally think that there is a little ray of hope here. The verification by RERA is not contemplated to my mind. What is, you take a risk of what your disclosures are, and if you make a false statement, there is a power of inquiry, power of almost like akin to search that they can make, ask you to disclose, and they can investigate, and if found guilty, you will be liable for the penalty.
Let me point out to you, in the actual bill, even any sort of oral statement made comes under the regulator. How do you verify and enforce that? From both the agent and the developer. How do you verify a conversation that's happened between the sales force of a developer and a customer, or between an agent and a customer? That's absolutely impossible to prove.
No, I believe the time will tell. It will be matter of evidence. It will how it is led and how it is proved. If it is proved, it will have its consequences. If it is disproved, it will not have its consequences. So I think we need not worry about the small things.
Spoken like a true lawyer, Mr. Shah.
No, I personally feel that the law is extremely ambitious, and it has given so many obligations to RERA also to perform. And I both the leading participants have said correctly and expressed fear that how this is going to be implemented. But to my mind, it may go in phases, and immediately the disclosure part will come in, registration part will come in.
Now, very quick question for you. The escrow account of 70%. Now, let's assume there's a building that's near completion, very close to getting its OC, which means it comes under the regulator. Now, this developer might have been selling for the last 2 years, might have been selling for the last 3 years. Is he going to have to back end all of that money into an escrow account, or how would that work?
No, not really. What he sells now and whatever he receives from the project, it is of course from the date that the project is registered. And Venkaiah ji also made a disclosure in Parliament before 15th of March when the bill was discussed, before the Lok Sabha passed it, that if in the question of land cost, if you have paid it in advance, then the withdrawal of this money with the committee of architect and engineer and the chartered accountant, that you can withdraw that money also. So I believe the states will look into the rule making power,
sure,
and they will be providing for this. So once the rules come into our hands, we will be able to find more solutions to the matter, and the state will have to act more prudently to ensure that the industry works and it doesn't stagnate with this particular law.
Ajay Markar is a viewer who's on the phone line right now. He's called us from the Delhi NCR region, which has had so many problems and should be welcoming the regulator with both hands. Ajay Markar, go ahead. Good evening. What's your question?
Sir, my question is that why government authorities don't have come in the ambit of this RERA Act?
Okay, you're saying government authorities, the local government bodies who hand out possessions and permissions?
Yes, they are also doing some sort of building business in India. Why don't they come in this umbrella?
It's an excellent question. You're not the first person to ask it. Very well,
for your information, it is the first time that the law has taken in its scope the government agencies like housing boards and like the agencies which do the construction. They will, if they are the promoters, then in that event they will also stand in queue along with all other private promoters. There is no distinction between the government body or a public sector body and a private person. So this particular fear is answered by the law.
Government body like MADA will also have to follow all of these rules, is what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely right.
All right. The extension of his question, and I'll bring in here both Mr. Gera and Mr. Hirandani. The extension of his question is this: a lot of times when we have these conversations about delayed buildings, the reason is that permissions have been delayed, whether that's environment permissions, whether permissions on the local or the state or sometimes national level have to be handed out. And we know that there are some cases where environment permissions take up to 3 years. Hopefully that will change. We know the government is working on it. But shouldn't that have also been part of this bill, Mr. Gera?
Yeah, you know, when this bill was being drafted, when it started being drafted with the UPA government, we in CREDAI had a lot of interaction with the then minister. And one of the things which came out loud and strong was that you need 4 agencies to play their part well for a real estate development project to be a success. And the 4 are the builder, the allottee as they are calling him, or the purchaser. The third is the local body or the competent authority. And the 4th is the financial institutions. When these 4 play their part as they are supposed to, things can work well. If one of them derails or goes off track, the project goes into a problem. Now, I do feel that it should have included definitely the local authorities, but the clause number 32 is one of the clauses that is not being talked about much in various forums where this bill has been discussed. And I think it's one of the best clauses which is there, where the regulator is obliged to recommend certain actions, to prevent delays, to make the bureaucracy, to make the officers, to make the local authority accountable in the interest of the real estate industry, in the interest of promoters, allottees and real estate agents.
In fairness, that's a suggestion. It's not really
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. There is no deadline on it. There are no milestones on it. So that is what is missing there. But the fact that it is there, I think this government has brought it in, saying that this can move forward now. So if it just wasn't there, we would be 2 steps behind. The fact that it is there, we can all pressurize, we can appeal to the authorities that this is critical, because there are so many good things, including rating and grading of projects and developers. So all this must happen as we go forward. Standardization. There are about 6 or 7 things.
I want to bring in Ramesh Jogani here. This is Ramesh, a recommendation that the regulator may make to the state later, but it includes rating of developers and promoters. Grading, it says, grading of developers and promoters. As an investor, as a retail investor, that should be good news for anybody who wants to invest in real estate.
For sure, it's good news. It's good news for the buyer as well as the developer, because if you're getting graded or if you're getting rated, you'll be more accessible to credit according to your rating. So these are all signs of our economy evolving, and along with how our stock markets have evolved, our real estate industry is also evolving. So it's going into that mature stage. So I think this is all very good. It's all about detailing, and I think once it's implemented, these things will be thrashed out. But whatever is happening for the better, for the industry, buyer, and for everybody, all stakeholders.
It's better for all stakeholders. A healthy market should have a regulator. And of course, there will be some period of adjustment. Niranjan, Hirandani, of course, one of the ways to solve that period of adjustment is continuous dialogue with the government. But do you foresee that for customers at least, it's going to be a year or so of confusion when the regulator does come in, before everybody figures out what the regulations are in every state, how they get applied, because developers have to figure it out, agents have to figure it out, customers have to figure it out. We might be looking at a phase of confusion?
Yes and no. I think the real story will be slightly different than that. You will get certain places where you will have a good regulator, where the good people have been appointed for the purposes of leading this subject and acting as a regulator, while there will be bad regulators in certain places. That's going to be the challenge, where you're faced with a bad regulator or a person who's corrupt and carries out extortion in the course of his regulation. So you'll have these differences happening. Remember, and I'd like to repeat it again, that the urban land ceiling was a fantastically beautiful act, one of the best acts where India had ever created. I don't think there's a better act than that really happened. But it was really a horrid and horrible implementation of that wonderful, beautiful act that really caused its downfall. So what we really need is not only a good act, which we now have, but also the fact that we need an act with good regulators to do it. And so the states will actually have to be bona fide, find good regulators, and see to it that the rules and regulations are such that are useful to the consumer, but do not cause delays and extortion that may take place in the course of such regulation.
Parimal Shroff, I want to ask you two questions which are, slightly grey areas. And let's be honest, the entire, the writing in this bill is a little grey, and it leaves some room for interpretation. Now, there's a very clear definition of what qualifies as carpet area in the bill. It also says that a developer must declare the carpet area of his of the units that he's selling. It does not in any way in the bill say the developer may only sell on carpet area. So it's very likely that the developer will say this is what the carpet area is of the unit, but the actual saleable, loaded, after loading will be a completely different picture, because the regulation doesn't insist that you sell only carpet area.
That's a way of your reading it, but actually speaking on reading the act as a whole, you will realize that this carpet area is the denomination by which that the builder will be able to sell. The rules will take care of it, and I may answer it, and rather it's only a response to what you put up, that the bill doesn't say that you can represent the carpet area but sell it any way that you desire. So it follows that you must sell it according to carpet area, and to sell anything else will be prohibited under the law.
And this will be something that will be left, that those blanks will be filled in by the state regulators' rules that
rules will come in, and that will surely take care of that.
But anyway, even now, the agreements mention carpet area.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because we have someone on the phone line who doesn't want to share their name. An anonymous caller has called in, one of our viewers. Go ahead, tell us what your question is.
Yeah, I wanted to know, an insurance cover is provided to builders for under construction projects, but the same is denied to consumers buying a flat in under construction project. Why?
Okay.
So I just want to know that.
All right. So
secondly, I have another question.
Yes.
Speaking of transparency, at the time of registering our flat, we are forced to pay a certain X amount in cash.
Okay.
For which no receipt is given. Now, despite us paying for the stamp duty registration, why do we have to pay this cash component?
Who are you paying the cash to?
At the sub-registrar's office.
At the sub-registrar's office. All right. So again, there's this whole question of black money, and I can, I can see the developers on the panel again feeling slightly, vindicated here at this point. There's this whole issue of black money in the market that this bill does not address, because maybe that was not what this bill was meant for. Parimal Shroff, the black money both on, on transaction and at local authority for both buyer and for developer. It's not addressing that problem at all.
It's a misfortune that in our public system and in our administration that we have the corruption which is institutionalized. There is a lot being done at the national level. I believe that the ethos are changing. If anybody thinks that this law is going to eradicate corruption, then I believe that it will be a very far-fetched idea.
Right.
But to my mind, I mean, this corruption issue to be linked with RERA is going to be, I will say that it will misjoinder.
No, but it is a joinder, because corruption is being linked with the real estate industry in every possible way, every step of the way. We cannot separate them.
No, but
now, that would be idealistic.
No. The point is this, that so far as the real estate is concerned, I believe it is an open secret that the real estate has gone into the black money, as we all know about, has disappeared or is disappearing in toto from the real estate industry, because everybody wants to borrow money, go to bank, valuations, disclosure, ready reckoner value.
I don't know if that's completely true, Mr. Shroff. I don't know if that's completely true. Even buyers who are borrowing money, going to the bank and things like that, I know there are cases when at the end when they are registering, they're being asked to cough up cash for maybe the parking lot or something else. But unfortunately, we've run out of time on this show and I have to wrap up this show. But this is a conversation that we should continue, because it changes all of our lives, especially the people on this panel. It changes the real estate industry and our lives as home buyers. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with us this weekend. If you have a question, email ID is at the bottom of your screen. Contact details are on your screen right now. You can reach me personally on Twitter. It will be my pleasure to hear from you. Thanks for watching and stay in touch.